Okay. Okay, let me try this, Kristen. Hold on a minute. Okay, can you see this? Did you see what I'm putting in the chat? Okay, so now let me try this with everybody. Can you guys see this, what I'm putting in the chat? Okay. Okay. All right, there we go. Now I can see you guys. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, let me get where I can share my screen, because one of the things you guys will find is I'm going to try to be as punctual as possible, because you guys have chosen to go down this road with me. So I'm going to honor your time. So thank you guys so much for being here. And then I'm going to make sure you guys can all tell me when you are seeing my screen here. Let me go to this. Okay. Do it this way. All right, to do this. Can you guys all see my screen? Everybody see the screen? Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Can everybody see my screen? Everybody can see the chat? You guys all good? Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And first of all, I just want to say huge congratulations to you, because you have signed up and you have shown up. So part 1 is done. So congratulations to you. We are going to go through this masterclass in 3 days. I am basically condensing 8 weeks of lessons into this Stopping Self-Sabotage masterclass that I have as a course into 3 days. So we're going to rock and roll really, really quickly. The best suggestion that I have for you to get the most out of this is to put it in the chat. You may not know who everybody is, and you may not know what everybody's stories are, but that is okay. The biggest thing is to make sure that you have everything within you that you need to get the most out of this. So the best way for that to happen is for you to be active in the chat and to interact with one another. So I am seeing your chat, just so I make sure you guys are all seeing the chat and can see each other. Everybody just put yes in the chat, just so I can know that I can see everybody in the chat. Just put yes in the chat. Awesome, 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 awesome. Okay, I'm seeing it, so here we go. So here is just a little bit about me. So who in the world is this lady who I see all over the internet, all over these ad campaigns, all over social media? What the heck is she? What is she trying to tell me? So I am a compassionate experience management consultant that I have built my whole life around helping entrepreneurs and business leaders and business executives and people in the corporate setting fall back in love with either their business or what their passion is, or what they were created and designed to do while they are here on this earth. So I have more than 20 years of experience, and I have done everything from building organizations from the ground up, starting brand new companies. I own 2 companies. My husband and I have a metal manufacturing plant. We have 15 employees. I also have this business, which you're involved in today, tomorrow and Wednesday, where I do consulting and coaching. And I also serve in my local city council as a city council person. So from all walks of life, including stint with nonprofit, I have had years of experience of understanding what entrepreneurs are looking for, what business executives are looking for, and also what staff needs in order to be able to thrive and flourish and live their best life. But I am also a recovering bad decision maker. So I can tell you all the things about how to stop self-sabotage, because I have lived it. I have been there and I have done it. So let me give you a little bit about my personal background. So I was married for 10 years and I had 2 children. Through that relationship, I ended up having to leave in the middle of the night with a police escort from the state of Tennessee to the state of Florida. And that you would have thought that would have been great in terms of me learning to not repeat that cycle, but I repeated that cycle again in a relationship. And that relationship was even worse than the one that I left, who was the father of my children. And so my outlet was work. My outlet was the corporate environment. My outlet was throwing myself into work because that was something I could control. That was something I could handle. That was something I could stay on top of, and no one could take that from me. But what I could not control was what was happening personally to me. And so I didn't pay enough attention to that. And so I repeated that cycle, not once, but twice. So I am a recovering bad decision maker, and we're going to get into how I began to recognize and learn what was happening within my psyche, with what the physiology talks about. There's neuroscience that talks about what we're talking about today. And it allowed me to stop surviving and just existing. And it allowed me to really be engaged and think about what I was going to do with my life to where I was able to thrive. And on top of that, for me, I'm a woman of faith. And so my belief in God and Jesus Christ allowed me to know that I was put on this earth and designed and created to be a masterpiece and to do something awesome. And I was just falling short of what I was created to do. And so through a lot of hard work, effort, and a lot of love from people around me, I was able to recover from making those bad decisions. So I have lived this, all these negative thoughts that you guys might be having about I'm this, I'm that, I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified. Why am I even here? Why am I even taking this time to invest in myself? I have been there, and I can tell you, you are right where you are supposed to be. So without going further, I first want to congratulate yourself. Give yourself a round of applause because you're here. You showed up. There is something about this topic that made you not only sign up, but you have shown up. So that lets me know and understand that there's something within you, that inner beast, that lioness that is like craving to get out there and do and be and become all the things that you were created and designed to be. But our head gets in the way and we sabotage ourselves. And so we have to learn how to stop that, because we women put so much pressure on ourselves and think I can do it all by myself, when it really takes our tribe to help us do those things. But if we don't recognize and know what keeps us from that, we end up, like me, repeating that cycle over and over and over again. So congratulations to yourself. You should honestly celebrate, because a lot of times when we don't get all the way down the finish line, we refuse or think we're not capable or qualified or good enough to celebrate the small wins. And those small wins matter, because every small win gets us here. Do you know how scared I was to actually hit the send button when it came time to advertise this? Because my mind kept telling me, no one's going to show up. No one cares what you have to say. But you know what? The actions that we take have to stop being attached to what the outcome is that we think we have to have in order to be successful, right? So yes, Macy, I'm my own worst enemy. We all are, right? We all are our own worst enemy. And the lies we tell ourselves are so deeply rooted. But if we don't know where those lies and thoughts come from, we don't know how to overcome them. We don't know how to stop them. So I wanted to just say congratulations to you. So this is my favorite slide of the entire deck with this. So this lady, I don't know if any of you feel that way, where you've got work and you've got bills you've got to pay, and you've got, husbands or staff or mother or children, or maybe you're taking care of elderly, or maybe you've got dinners you've got to go make, or you've got a meeting you've got to prep for, and you've got deadlines, and you've got, oh, by the way, I'm trying to eat right, I'm trying to exercise, and I've got a neighbor who yells at me all the time. How in the world do I make it all happen? How do we get there? How do we get past where we are in that moment? So you've decided to show up. You decided, first of all, to sign up. You decided to show up. And so now I'm going to ask you to commit, decide to commit, decide to be here each and every single day. It's 6 hours. You guys are going to have gone through this with me 2 hours a day for 3 days, 6 hours. You guys are going to be like the pros of overcoming this and knowing how to stop self-sabotage. So commit yourself. You're here. So commit. Put the emails away, minimize the Outlook calendar, the Gmail calendar, forget the deadlines. You've made the commitment. So be here and stay here and commit and focus on what's at hand. So let me make sure I can help you all with that. So did everybody download the workbook? Everybody got the workbook? Anybody still need the workbook? Okay, awesome. So this workbook will help you. And if you don't have access to the workbook, you can totally take notes, but this is going to be a really helpful guide for us along the way. So if you can get that, go ahead and download that. You can see it in the emails that we've got. And so then I want you to commit to succeed. I want you to commit to succeed in what we're talking about, because it's all fine and dandy, but we all get all the information. And then if we don't activate it within 4 weeks of learning something, we go right back. Our mind triggers right back into what it knows, because that's what is convenient. It's convenient for it to do that. It's convenient for it to say, okay, this is what I know. This is what's supposed to happen. And so it's familiar with what is the insecurity. It's familiar with what is the non-action. It's familiar with autopilot. And we have to unlearn and retrain our brains to do something differently. So it is a commitment that you're going to have to make and decide. You decided to show up. Kudos to you. I literally, so many times we sign up for stuff and we don't show up, right? We had all the great intentions, but you're here. So now you might as well make it be worth your while, right? Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of something that I want you guys to do with me. And this isn't like hoity-toity, like new age stuff, because I am not into all that stuff. But I want you to just look into this and the spiral that's on your screen. I'm going to put some music on here for you. And I want us to just look at the ability to follow the spiral. So as that ball goes into the outside, I want you to exhale. When the ball hits the middle, inhale. And then I want you to breathe out with your mouth. And I just want you to focus on that. Just follow the spiral. Don't focus on anything else. Just follow the spiral and breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And I just want you to focus on all of the different things that you've got to exhale out of your body. All the things that we need to get rid of on any given day. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. It may seem like the simplest thing to do, but it is so hard to just stop and focus on the breathing. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Now I want you to close your eyes. And if you're worried about what you're going to miss out on by closing your eyes, look on the screen. See the pictures of people with their eyes closed? That's what everybody's going to look like. So close your eyes. And before we get started down this journey, I want you to take just a minute and I want to just help you relax and clear your mind so that you can be open to the learning. So the first thing we're doing, we're focusing on our breath, just breathing in with your nose, out with your mouth. Take a few deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe in, I want you to imagine that you're filling your body with peace and calm. Breathing in peace. And as you breathe out, I want you to think about releasing all of that tension and stress you've got your mind focused on. Breathe in the peace. Breathe out the tension. Breathe in the calm. Breathe out all the tension. I want you to imagine as you breathe in, you're breathing in golden sunlight. Maybe you're in a safe place on a beach and you're taking in the sunlight and you're hearing the waves crash into the shore. As you breathe out, the waves are going back out. And you breathe in, you're just taking in all that sunlight. Maybe you're in a mountainous area and you can hear the birds chirping and the wind blowing. Maybe the leaves are falling in it's fall, and you're just taking in the nature. Breathe in, let go of all the tension. And as you're breathing in, all that calm, as you breathe out this next breath, I want you to think about a little creek. You see the current of that little creek bank going, and there goes all the tension. There goes all of your thoughts. There goes all of your concerns. Breathe in, and there go all of your thoughts. So now we've got our breathing. I want you to focus on your nerves. Take more breaths. Each time you breathe, breathe in with your nose and out through your mouth. And I want you to think about becoming relaxed. All the wires firing in your brain, all the things you've got thinking about as you breathe in, those wires just kind of go calm and they go numb and they go straight and they're not moving, they're not firing anymore. The wires are just becoming more relaxed. And as you breathe in, those wires that were all these dark black wires, they're just clear. And there's nothing going in and out of them. They're just clear wires. So now we're going to relax your body. Starting at your head as you breathe in. With each breath, we're going to move from your head down to your feet. Breathe in. All the thoughts in your mind, just breathe them out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let your neck just get relaxed. You're sitting in your seat. Just let your shoulders relax. Breathe in. Let your chest and your stomach just relax. Let the fat out. Nobody's watching. Nobody cares. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let your arms just dangle. Breathe in. Breathe out. All the way down to your legs. You can feel that relaxing in your legs. Breathe in. All the way down to your feet and your toes. And as you still have your eyes closed, I want you to have a visualization. And I want you to think about being on a long, deserted road. Think of like Route 66, but there's nothing for miles. Those pictures you see where it's just the road, and on either direction you can look and there's nobody coming. On either side of the road, there's just nothing but the roads, the grass, maybe it's cactus, whatever it may be. Off in the distance on either side, you can see mountains. There's just nothing there but you and the wide open road and wide open spaces. And I want you to imagine standing in that street. And I want you to imagine that you're holding two heavy suitcases, one on either side. And one of the suitcases on one side is all of the worries about your future. And on the other side is a world full of regret in that suitcase, and you can hardly hold it. Your hands are hurting. The weight of both of those bags are so heavy. What color are the bags? How much does each one weigh? Is one weigh more than the other? Think about the weight in the bag with the worries of the future. Think about the weight of the bag full of regrets from your past. I want you to think about the bag with the future in it, with all the worries. And I want you to start walking. Doesn't matter which direction you choose. I want you to think about the future, how the future is going to happen no matter what. We can't turn back the clock. And whatever that outcome is, all those worries that we have, I want you to make yourself know most of those worries are never going to come to fruition. And as you're walking, I want you to think about that bag of worry somehow unlocking, or the zippers coming undone, and that lid opening up of that suitcase, and that worry just falling out. And you keep walking. Don't look back. Don't go pick them up. Don't think about the worry. Keep walking. And there's nothing left in that suitcase, so you begin to drop it. Keep walking. Keep visualizing yourself walking. And you still got that other bag from the past, the bag of regret, the bag of the shame and the guilt. But I want you to think about that bag unlocking, and that bag unzipping, and that lid of that past suitcase coming undone, and all of that shame and regret coming out. And keep holding the bag. Keep walking forward. Don't look back at that regret. Don't look back at any of it. And suddenly feel your hand release and empty the suitcases and let go of the suitcases, and you keep walking. And if you're sitting, I want you to put your hands on your lap and your palms up. And I want you to open your eyes and look down at your hands. Your hands are empty. Your hands have nothing in them. There's no worry, and there's no guilt, and there's no shame, and there's no regret. And there's nothing in either one of these bags, because you have an open mind, you have an open heart, and you have an open opportunity to change the entire trajectory of your life. Okay? So now we're going to get into the meat and the crust of all of this good stuff. So you can open your eyes now. And so I want you to think about what you think of when you think of the words self-sabotage. Okay? When you think of self-sabotage, what the heck comes to your mind? Okay? And hold on to that, because you're gonna put it in the chat here in just a minute. But just to give you a visual for some of you who are visual like me, let me just tell you what self-sabotage is. Okay? You might think it's something like this. We're gonna tell you what it is and what it is not. So I'm a meme person. So how many of you sometimes feel like, okay, I created this life, so I might as well make the best of the situation I created. So maybe you set your own house on fire. Hey, I might as well have a cigarette out of it. I might as well make the best out of the situation I created, right? In other words, some of us are just a bunch of hot messes, right? How about this one? It's Monday. It's 1:30, 12:30, 6:30, depending upon where you are in the world. It's been a perfectly good day, and already you have overthought something to death. And now, poor little, the Simpson family, it's awful. It's gone to shreds. And it hasn't even happened, but in our minds it's happened, and we've overthought it, and we've completely collapsed the kingdom, right? The moat is overflowed. They've taken over the castle. It's done, right? Maybe some of you are looking to see what's going on in the world. It is already July 2023. Some of you had the greatest New Year's resolution or goals that you set for yourselves. January happened. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to conquer 2023. It's mine. And then one bad decision after another, or not so great decision after another happened. And then it's June, and you've woken up and you're like, what has happened with half of this year? And now it's mid-July, and you're like, what in the world is going on? What's happened to my goals? What am I going to do to accomplish anything that I put forth in 2023 that I wanted to accomplish, right? So if any of these are resonate with you, tell me, say, this is me in the chat, just so I know. Say, this is me in the chat. Maybe you are the self-doubt girl, and you have your goals, but all the way up the mountain, you are carrying that self-doubt with you because you're like, I have to carry this self-doubt. This is me. I gotta wrestle with it. Or maybe if you would put it down, it might be a little bit easier for you, right? And maybe you say, I don't have time. I don't have time to pursue my goals. I don't have time to pursue my dreams. It's overwhelming. When really you have a fear of failure. It's not even a fear of failure so much as it is a fear of success. What happens if you're successful? What happens if you win? But tell me more about every Netflix show you've ever watched on the show, or Amazon Prime or Hulu or whatever your shows are of choice, because it's easier, again, to revert back to autopilot than it is to have to change our thinking, right? Well, here's me again on Jenga. I'm going to pull the rug out from myself. We're our own worst enemy, right? And here I am self-sabotaging my life again, right? Anybody resonate with this, where you just overthink things, or you do the same things over and over again? You're like, why do I keep repeating these same patterns, right? And of course, in honor of the Barbie movie, when you see yourself self-sabotage, but you just can't stop, right? You're like, I know I'm going down this road. It's like the roller coaster where you can see you're going to go down, but you can't stop because you're already locked and loaded in, right? That's where we are. That's what happens in our minds. Our mind takes us through these journeys that aren't even reality, but we sabotage ourselves before we even start, right? Is that anybody resonate with that? So now going back, what word comes to mind when you think of self-sabotage? Put that in the chat. What word comes to mind when you think of self-sabotage? Put it in the chat. What do you think of when you think of the word self-sabotage? What comes to mind? Procrastinator? Yep. Anybody else? How about doubter? Maybe a doubter? Anybody a controller? I can't control it. Maybe you're inactive. Yeah, negative self-talk, Kristen. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we're going to go through all of these, what I call saboteurs, that keep us from accomplishing all the things that we want to accomplish. And unless we can recognize what those things are consistently, it's very difficult for us to overcome them, because they have taken control of our life. Because on any given day, we have between 25,000 and 50,000 thoughts. 25,000, 50,000 thoughts. No wonder we're exhausted, ladies. But on any given time, 70% of those thoughts are negative. So no wonder. And then we have these what we call saboteurs, the procrastinator, the controller, the perfectionist on top of all of that. No wonder we can't get ahead, right? Yeah, Macy, dwelling on the past, for sure. And overthinking things, absolutely. We do those. Well, what self-sabotage is not, guys, it's not as obvious as we think. It's not about cutting off your ear, poor little Van Gogh. It's not that obvious. It's much more subtle. It's the deception of the gradual. And unless we're able to pay attention to that, and unless we're able to recognize that, our life keeps going like we're little hamsters on a hamster wheel, going over and over and over again. And then you wake up again. It's July 2023. Where did the year go? What have I even done? What have I even accomplished? We show up, we go to work, we show up, we take care of our kids, we show up, take care of parents, we show up, have our friendships, we go to church, we do whatever we do. But what did we really accomplish? And we were created and designed to do wonderful things. And I call it exploits for what we were designed to do. We were designed to be a masterpiece, and that's not a prideful thing. We were designed and created by a creator who uniquely knew what each of us were supposed to do and created us to do that. But we've gotten in the way of what that path is, and we have to go back and find it. And we have to be able to allow ourselves to go find it. But if we don't recognize what got us in the way, what got in the way of that, we can't go back and get on the right path again. So self-sabotage, here we go. is the unconscious or conscious behaviors, actions, or thought patterns that undermine our own progress, well-being, and success. The conscious or unconscious or subconscious behaviors, actions, or thought patterns that undermine our own progress, well-being, and success. Totally makes sense when you see it. You're like, well, of course it is. Of course that's what that is. But when we see it in action, it's not so clear. So let's kind of dive in here. And I'm going to go through a little bit of the science of this. So just sit tight with me for a minute. Put in the chat if you've ever heard the topic PQ, or positive intelligent quotient. Has anybody ever heard that? Put yes in the chat if you've ever heard this. Just so I kind of know how much to dive in with this, or if I need to kind of go. Most people have not. So if you haven't, don't feel bad. So the positive quotient, or the positive intelligent quotient, think of it this way. It is really, like I said, we have 50,000 thoughts on any given day, right? 70% of them are negative. So the quotient, the positive intelligent quotient, is how often is my brain working for me or on my benefit or on my behalf, versus how often is my brain working against me. In other words, when is my brain my friend versus my foe? Okay, so it is the ability to gauge your brain's physical fitness in a mental capacity. It's the mental fitness ability, and there's a whole neuroscience behind this, and the pre-cortex and all this mess, which I'm too blonde to understand all of that stuff, so I won't even try. But all of that is impactful in understanding what we're doing. So we have all these thoughts, and all these thoughts tend to be negative, and they're underlined by these saboteurs, which we're going to go into, and they take over what would be a normal positive thought process, and they're immediately turned into the negative. You know, life happens, and we immediately look for all the negative ways this is going to impact us, rather than saying, what are all the positive ways that this could impact me? Because our brains become rewired to be manifested by these saboteurs, rather than to be manifested through positive outlook, because we are working towards a greater goal than ourselves. That we get so selfish and so wrapped up in our own life, we can't come up for air long enough and be objective long enough to look at and say, what in the world is going on here? And we become, instead of in the driver's seat of our lives, we become in the passenger seat, and we're just watching life go by. We become survivors instead of thrivers. And in my world, I became to the point where I was just existing. I was not even living. Autopilot, zombie land. I was raising 2 kids. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to figure out how to not destroy them in the process while I was empty, and I had nothing to give to them after my divorce, because I had never failed at anything in my entire life. So when that happened and that failed, so yeah, Ranty, total zombie. I was a zombie trying to raise 2 small children all by myself. And I was working 2 jobs, at one point 3 jobs, because the child support wasn't coming. And instead of saying, okay, I'm not going to be a victim, I was going to go and make something, because I know I can do good work, because work was where my sanctuary was when things in my marriage had gone wrong. I will revert back to just working. I'll just work, and the money will come. I'll take care of the bills, and I'll take care of them, and they'll have food on their table, and they'll be okay. But they weren't okay, because I wasn't okay, because you cannot fill from an empty cup. You cannot fill from an empty cup. You have to be full and whole to be able to take care of the people around you. And so there's that fine line of self-care between taking care of yourself so you can take care of others, and being so introverted or so internally focused and so selfish that all you do is take care of yourself. There's a fine line there, but you have to be able to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. And that's where a lot of us, especially women, we struggle, because, oh, I've got my friends I need to take care of, and I've got my family I need to take care of, and I've got this I need to take care of, and work needs me to be this and needs me to be that. and I don't want to be, I don't want to cause any issues for anyone. So I will just sit here and suffer in silence. Meanwhile, Rome is burning all around me, but I'm okay because if I don't talk about it, if I don't look at it, and if I don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist. Therefore, I just am a zombie and I'm just existing and I'm just surviving in the world. And the sabotaged thinking, the saboteurs have come in and they have taken control over my life rather than being in the driver's seat of my life. And that was me for a very, very, very long time. Even I was married for 10 years. And even after my divorce, it took me 7, almost 8 years to wake back up, because I knew this wasn't the life I was supposed to have, but I could not acknowledge it. I could not get out of my own way to say there is a better way. And I grew up from a place where there was an outlet, where there was faith, where I had a great family. I didn't have a typical excuse to say, there's a reason why you're in that place, or it makes sense that you're doing that because of what your upbringing was. I didn't have that excuse. I was just a hot mess, and I could not get out of my own way, and I could not get past the thoughts that I was having, and it impacted the relationship I was having with my children, with my family, with loved ones. I was repeating that cycle. And yeah, Macy, you feel like you're drowning. You feel like you're drowning. And then you're questioning everything you know about you to be true, where you're saying, does anybody even care that I'm here? And those were the questions I was having. Absolutely the questions that I was having. And so we dive deeper into this and we look into this. But one of the things that we first have to understand is we have to know who our enemy is. Our enemy is our mind. It can be our worst enemy, I should say. It can either work for us or it can work against us, okay? And there are 7 different proofs from positive psychology that show you the power of your mind. And I just want to talk through a couple of these. Number 1, visualization can create results. So there was a psychologist named Alan Richardson, and he decided that he was going to do an experiment to make this prove true. So he takes a group of basketball players and he takes them in 3 different buckets. He takes one group and they practice every day, just like you think a basketball team would. He takes a second group of people and he has them visualize only shooting free throws, and then going in, shooting free throws and then going in. And then of course his third group didn't touch a ball and didn't do any visualization. So you can imagine what that group did. They of course regressed because they weren't touching a ball and they weren't visualizing anything. But the second group, where he said just visualize holding that ball in your hand, having the follow through, imagine that ball going perfectly into that ring, not touching the ring, going through the net. Imagine that. Imagine and visualize in your mind that going through every time, how you bend your knees, how you come through, follow through. And then he had the first group who, yes, made progress, but that second group almost succeeded as much as the group that actually practiced. So visualizing a positive outcome, visualizing a change in your life actually is proven scientifically to make a difference, the power of your mind. The second thing that the power of your mind does, I want everybody right now, it's going to feel weird. Everybody just smile. Everybody just take a big old fat smile. Feels so weird. Why am I smiling on the Zoom? Who are these people I'm smiling at? Oh my gosh, what's happening? Smiling changes your mood. It's proven to be true. It can change your mood. Power of your mind. Number 3, thought management lowers stress. Okay. This is one of the main things we're going to focus on in this masterclass is the power of thought management, because we can't change or stop every thought that comes into our mind. We're human, right? We get a thought about this, thought about that. The dumb driver in front of us that cut us off, the person at the checkout lane, we get thoughts, but we can control the outcomes we attach to those thoughts, right? And we can, yes, Macy, we can learn to trust ourselves again. That was the biggest thing I didn't do, Macy. I had stopped trusting myself because I had made so many bad decisions. I stopped trusting myself. The brain, did you know that the brain can produce serotonin? Why the heck does that matter, Darla? Well, the serotonin levels, for those of you who may have low serotonin levels, do you have trouble finishing things? Do you have trouble staying active? Do you have difficulty focusing on things? Your serotonin impacts that, and your brain can produce its own serotonin. You don't just need a vitamin to help you do that, although some people take it. But your brain can produce its own serotonin. So let's say you're outside in the sunlight. Sunlight produces what? UV rays. What's in UV rays? Vitamin D. Vitamin D produces serotonin, right? Some of the other things that can impact your serotonin levels is that, let's say you do a massage. There's a scientific study, and I forget who the guy is. There's a scientific study that women who received a massage twice a week improved their serotonin levels by 30%. So ladies, here's your license to go get yourself a stinking massage twice a week and validate it for mental health. Okay. And then of course your exercise, increases your endorphin levels, and your endorphin levels produce serotonin. Okay. Then another thing that Power of Your Mind does, which is no secret, but Power of Your Mind, positivity can produce a prolonged life, and it can make things a lot better. But here's the thing that we don't do. We don't exercise our brain. Our brain is a muscle. And Shirzad Chamine, who is the author of Positive Intelligence, says, the muscles of the brain that give us access to our greatest wisdom and insights have remained weak from years of not being exercised. So it's just like anything else. In this day and age, most of our jobs anymore, prior to COVID, we were required to sit all day, right? If we had office jobs or those kinds of things. And so our legs fatigue, our muscles fatigue, our tushy starts to hurt a little bit more. So we have to work those things out. We've got to build stronger muscles. We've got to build stronger biceps and triceps so we can keep lifting things, lift our groceries as we get older, whatever those things may be. Our brain is the same thing. I happen to sing. Your vocal cords or muscle, you've got to improve that. You've got to work with that. Speaking requires you to improve that muscle. It's the same thing with your brain. You've got to work that muscle. And if all you're doing is on autopilot, you're just assuming I'm going to get muscles by walking around and doing whatever I might do in my house as the only way to build muscles. That's not going to be enough. Same thing with your brain. We've got to do something different to activate a different result. So we've got to talk about this. So the benefits that have been found with positive intelligent quotient for workers in the workplace, 37% of sales reps, this is for 10,000 people, 37% of sales reps saw an increase in sales. Corporations saw fewer sick days by employees. Employees were less likely to burn out or quit. Anybody heard of the slow quit? Doctors were able to accurately diagnose 19% faster. That's huge, guys, huge. Teams that worked on projects had a 31% increased performance rate. It enhanced their immune system functionality. It lowered stress levels, lowered blood pressure. There was less pain, better sleep. Anybody, you could use a better night's sleep? I know I could. And they were less likely to have hypertension, diabetes, or stroke, three of the main things that are underlying factors to make our deaths faster and more imminent. So it behooves us all physically, in addition to mentally, to pay attention to this. So that's why I cannot congratulate you all fast enough for being here, because it isn't just about the mind. There's so many other benefits that come with this, and this impacts every last thing that you do on any given day, at any given time, at any given place. So we have think of your mind. You've got two brains going on, one brain, two sections. You've got the thrive going on. Life is good. I'm making great choices. I'm being intentional about my life. This is awesome. Usually January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, maybe January 4th, you're in thrive mode, but maybe by July 17th, you're in survivor mode. I'm just trying to get through another day. If it rains one more day and I got to get out of bed to go to work, oh my goodness, my boss is horrible. My neighbor's awful. My family's yelling at me. My kids are yelling at me. This is not how I thought 2023 was going to go. At some point, my life is supposed to be changing for the better, but I'm still in survival mode. You have to understand at any given point on any given day, your brain is fighting that. Do I go thrive mode or do I go survival mode? And in my world, I was just in existing autopilot mode. I'm just here. I'm automatically breathing air. I know we were intentional earlier about breathing in and breathing out and doing the breath work. But since then, have you thought one time about whether or not you breathe? It just doesn't, right? It just doesn't. And so long as you're eating enough to stay alive, you're going to stay alive. But it's not about just staying alive as much as John Travolta wants us to think about it. It's all about thriving. And I believe having what we call a life of abundance and an abundant life, because that's what you were created and designed to have. And so the brain doesn't just do this automatically. We have these biases and we have these experiences that have happened in the course of our life that have made us question everything we know to be true. Okay? So the biggest thing that we have that go on in our mind is the saboteur. Okay, we have these saboteurs that have taken over our brain. And so we're going to go through each one of these. And as these resonate with you, I want you to just say me in the chat. Okay. The saboteurs are the negative thought habits and patterns that live in your unconscious mind and derail or keep you from success and happiness. Okay. Because as much as we want to say, oh, it's all up to me, I've done this all by myself, there's a reason why. But in the best possible way, this is the coolest thing you're going to learn, because once you can identify who these guys are, you can then identify them when these thoughts come in and say, time out. That's not who I am. That's who my saboteur is telling me that I am. That's not who I am. And for me, with my faith, I am designed and created to be a child of God. I know exactly what I was designed and created to be. Saboteur, you cannot have any more space in my mind. You're not going to win. I am taking back control of my life. So the master saboteur, here we go. The master saboteur is called the judge. This guy is the evil guy. He's the one that is going to bring all these other little guys along with him for the ride. And he's going to tell us all these bad things that we don't want to hear, that we don't want to know. So how many of you would resonate with, I'm going to read in each of these this is from Positive Intelligence, so I cannot claim this knowledge, nor would I ever, but I've done all this work for you, so all you have to do is take good notes. The judge finds faults with himself, with others, and the circumstances. Anything that could go wrong is going to go wrong, okay? So the causes a lot of disappointment and anger, and then he activates, or she activates, the other accomplice saboteurs that we have in our mind. So some of the characteristics of the judge: he badgers himself for past mistakes or current shortcomings. Anybody tell yourself you're not good enough, smart enough? You know, there's old Saturday Night Live episode back from like the 80s or early 90s. Mr. Smalley, I think is what it was, where it's like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. This judge is saying, yeah, nobody likes you. Okay, that's the judge. As soon as you get a positive thought, the judge is like, yeah, no, that wasn't for you. That was for everybody else. That wasn't for you. You're in church and you hear a good word, or you go to a conference and you hear something positive, and or a boss says something nice about your team. You're like, yeah, that was for everybody else. That wasn't for you. That's the judge. Okay. So some of the thoughts you might be having as the judge: what is wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Or the judge is telling you there's something wrong with everybody else. What's wrong with the circumstance? What's wrong with everybody else? You might have feelings of guilt and of shame and disappointment. Much of the anger and anxiety that you have comes from this judge. So here are some of the lies and justification that your judge, saboteur, in your mind tells you. Without me pushing you, you're going to get lazy and complacent. Without me punishing you for mistakes, you're not going to learn from them, and so you're just going to repeat them. Without me judging others, you're going to lose your objectivity and not protect your self-interest. And without me making you feel bad about negative outcomes, you won't do anything to change them. So the impact that the judge saboteur has on you and others is that as the master saboteur and the original cause of much of your anxiety, distress, and suffering, the judge might also be the cause of many of your broken relationships. Okay, so now we're going to go into all the different accomplices. So we've got the avoider accomplice, the controller accomplice, hyperachiever, hyper rational, hyper vigilant, the pleaser, restless, the victim, and the stickler. And you're probably going to have more than one accomplice. Okay, so let's get into this. So where are all my avoiders at? Okay, so put me in the chat. Say me in the chat if this is you. You have a focus on the positive and pleasant in a very extreme way. You avoid difficult conversations and then you feel bad because you had to avoid the difficult conversations. You avoid conflict. You say yes to everything. You have a difficulty saying no. Anybody have a problem saying no? Because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings? Yeah. You lose yourself in comforting routines and habits, and then you end up procrastinating on unpleasant tasks. Your thoughts are, this is just too unpleasant. Maybe if I let it go, it'll just take care of itself. If I pretend it's not here and that it doesn't exist, it will just go away. I have found balance, and I don't want to say or do anything to mess that up. Anybody? Bueller? You have feelings of just trying to remain even-keeled. You fear hard-won peace of mind is going to be interrupted if you open up your mouth. So therefore, you suppress your anger and resentment. You tell yourself these lies. You are a good person because you're sparing everybody's feelings. No good is ever going to come out of a conflict. It is good to just be flexible, and I'm fine being the flexible one. Someone's going to have to be the peacekeeper in this situation. Anybody? So what happens is your relationships are kept superficial because you're avoiding conflict and you're not able to have critical conversations. And others' trust level is reduced because they are not sure when negative information from you is being withheld. Anybody face that? Yeah. Okay, where are all my controllers at? Where are my control freaks at? Who's with me? Okay. All right. We controllers have anxiety-based need to take charge and control situations. We bend people's actions to our own will. Some of our characteristics, we need to take control and be in charge. We connect with others through competition, through challenge, through physicality, and through conflict rather than through emotional vulnerability. We're stimulated by conflicts and connect through conflict. We're surprised when others get hurt. What's the big deal? Some of the thoughts that we have. I am either in control or out of control. And if I work hard enough, I can and should control the situation so that it goes my way. No one's going to tell me what to do. Some of the feelings that we have. High anxiety when things are not going our way. We're impatient when others feel feelings, when they feel feelings, but they're different styles than ours. And we feel hurt and rejected, although we will rarely admit it. So some of the lies you tell yourself as a controller: without me, you cannot get anything done. You need me to push people. If I don't control, I will be controlled, and I am not about to live with that. Or I'm trying to get the job done for all our sakes. You guys all need me to be in charge because I can get this project over the finish line, right? Anybody, if you're not that person, you know somebody at work who's like that. The controller does get temporary results, but often at the cost of others. And they generate a great deal of anxiety since many things in work or life are ultimately out of our control. But yet we require the control, right? So I'm a major control freak. So that one, we just pass through that one as quickly as we possibly can. All right. Where are all my hyperachievers at? Where are all my super women at? My superheroes? Yeah, Ranty, all in or not at all, for sure. Yep, absolutely. Where are my hyperachievers? Okay, hyperachievers, this is you. You are depending upon constant performance and achievement for your own self-respect and self-validation. You're competitive, you're image and status conscious. You're goal-oriented, you are probably a workaholic. You might have been called that, but don't think you are. You can be self-promoting, you can keep people at a safe distance. Some of the thoughts that you tell yourself: I must be the best at what I do. If I can't be outstanding, why bother? I can be anything I want to be, but your emotions get in the way of the performance, so you have to focus on thinking and action. I am worthy as long as I am successful and others think well or highly of me. Your feelings. Here's how you feel, Miss Hyperachiever. You don't like dwelling in your feelings very long because they distract you from achieving the goals. Sometimes you feel empty and depressed inside, but you refuse to let yourself linger there. You feel worthy mainly through accomplishments only. You might fear intimacy or vulnerability, or you might like it, but only if it's one-sided from your partner. And some of the lies you tell yourself is that life is about achieving and producing results. Portraying a good image helps me achieve results. Feelings are just a distraction and don't help me do anything. The impact of this on your buddies and on your friends and on your loved ones is that peace and happiness are fleeting and short-lived and brief celebrations of achievement. Others might be pulled into your performance vortex and become similarly lopsided in their focus of external achievement. So you've got a lot of pull on your people as a hyperachiever. Okay. I used to be a hyperachiever, but since I've been staying at home, I feel worthless sometimes. Ranty, we all can feel that way. We all can feel that way, where we've been secure or successful at a portion or part of our life, and then that changed what we identified ourselves was in to make ourselves feel successful. And when that gets taken from us for whatever reason, or when we remove ourselves from that, it makes us question whether or not we were successful at all. And yeah, Macy, the blocking out, the feeling, putting it away with whatever. Some people drink, some people are workoutaholics to avoid feeling all the feels. For sure, we've all been there. Okay, we're my hyper rational people. My methods are sound and they are time honored. So in the upper left hand side, you see the little wires going all over the place. It looks like the wires going here, there, and everywhere. And then you got the little guy on the right who's just got the cognition wheel going, and he's just like, all you got to do is this, this, and this. And sometimes those hyper rational people, and if you are one, I love you. I think you're great. But there's times where I am not a hyper rational person. I'm definitely a feeler, where I just want to punch them in the face because I want to feel. I don't want to just go to the answer. I need to be able to work the answer all the way out. And a lot of times they are already at the end of the solution and already know it. And it's really hard sometimes for hyper rational people to work as a team, because they've already figured out the answer. And when they have to work as a team, they're basing the success on everybody else coming to the same conclusion. And if people don't come to the same conclusion at the same time they do, they get really, really, really frustrated. So hyper rational possesses an intense and active mind, and they sometimes can come across as actually arrogant or secretive. They can lose track of time due to being intense concentration, and they have a strong penchant for skepticism and debate. They prefer to just watch the surrounding craziness and analyze from a distance. Some of the thoughts that a hyper-rational has is the rational mind is where it's at. Feelings are distracting and they're irrelevant. Many people are so irrational and sloppy in their thinking. Needs and emotions of others distract me from my projects. I just need to shut out any intrusion or human interaction. What I value most is knowledge, understanding, and insight. And my self-worth is attached to mastering knowledge and competence. Some of the feelings they have is that they're often skeptical or cynical. They're frustrated with other people who are emotional or, in their mind, irrational. And so the lies that a hyper rational person will tell themselves is that the rational mind is the most important thing. It should be protected from the wasteful intrusion of people's messy emotions. And the impact on the self and others is that it limits the depth and flexibility of relationships in work and life by analyzing rather than experiencing. And so hyper rational people can actually intimidate others around them. All right, so next up, hyper vigilant. Hyper vigilant. So what we mean by this is you may have a continuous, intense anxiety about if it could go wrong, it will go wrong. Therefore, it is going to go wrong before it's ever gone wrong. Okay, that is a hypervigilant person. You're always anxious. You've got chronic doubts. You've got doubts about yourself, doubts about others. You're suspicious of what others might be up to. You have an expectation that people are going to mess up. If you are a parent, sometimes you might have been labeled a helicopter parent, where you want to scoop in and free your kids and fix your kids and take care of your kids so they don't ever have to experience pain or loss or figuring anything out on their own. Maybe you anticipate that your kids' friends might not be great or good, but there's nothing to base that off of. So you keep your kids from hanging out with those kids because you think something might go wrong and they're going to hurt your kids. So some of the thoughts that you have as a hypervigilant is you wonder, when is the other shoe going to drop? When's the other shoe going to drop? I'm sure during COVID, hypervigilant folks lost their minds, okay? If I make a mistake, I feel everyone is going to jump down my throat. I want to trust people, but I find myself suspicious of their motives. I need to know what the rules are. I need to follow the rules. I need to make sure who on my team is going to follow the rules, who's not going to follow the rules. Your feelings can be skeptical, even cynical, and you're also very, very anxious most of the time. Some of the lies you tell yourself to justify your thoughts are, life is full of dangers, and if I don't look out for them, who's going to do it? So you have chosen yourself to be the vigilante to make sure all the rules are followed, everybody else follows those rules. But the impact on yourself and others is this: it's a hard way to live. And there's constant anxiety that burns a great deal of vital energy that could otherwise be used doing something fruitful. And the people around you, because you're so worried all of the time, you end up becoming the person that cries wolf. So then nobody believes you when there's an actual danger. So that's the hypervigilant. Anybody hypervigilant? All right, next up, people pleaser. My favorite picture of this whole entire deck is this guy with this little smiley face in the top, because how many times, and granted, for my life, I had to be that person for a lot of times where I had to hold on, I went too far, didn't I? The people pleaser went too far. Oh gosh, did you guys hear that mic drop? No, everybody hear that? Okay. Too many computers going on. So the people pleaser is the one where you're happy, that's what you look like up in the top right hand corner. You're sad, top right hand corner. Your best friend just died, top right hand corner. Your dog died, top right hand corner. You're a people pleaser. The world is what it is, and you're gonna just keep pleasing along and showing everybody that they're okay and you're okay, and you do whatever it takes for everybody else to like you. And so you have a strong need to be liked and attempts to earn it by helping, pleasing. You feel the need to rescue, and you also feel the need to constantly flatter other people. But you also need frequent reassurance of the acceptance and affection of others. You cannot express your own needs openly and directly. And to be a good person, you feel like you should put the needs of others ahead of you. Is this anybody? It bothers you when people don't notice or care about what you've done for them, because how ungrateful are they, even though they didn't ask you to do it? You feel like you give away too much and that you don't think of yourself enough. You have a thought of, I can make anyone like me. You have the thoughts of, if I don't rescue people, who will? And then your feelings are that you express your own needs directly. And if you were to express your own needs directly, you're going to feel selfish in doing that. You're worried that insisting on your own needs are probably going to drive others away. So you just don't show up in friendships. You don't show up in relationships. You're just a giver. You're a pleaser. You accommodate. You concede. And some of the justification in what you tell yourself is a lie is that I don't do this for myself. I help others selflessly and I don't expect anything in return. And the world would be a better place if everyone did things the way I did them, by giving. And some of the impact is that you can jeopardize taking care of your own needs, whether emotional, physical, or financial, which can then lead to some resentment and burnout. And you can end up resenting your partner or your friends or your loved ones, and you don't even know why, and they didn't even know you were having an issue. So it's a lot, kind of like the avoider as well, that you feel like you can do enough to help other people out where it doesn't make a difference, or it can make a difference. All right, my restless folks, this is me again. So let's see where all my people are at. So you are constantly in search of the next best thing. The idea of maintaining something drives you crazy. The idea of building and starting something new, you are like, where do I need to sign up? I will be the first one there. You are rarely at peace or content with the current status quo. Your characteristics, you're easily distracted. You can get scattered. You like to stay busy. You like to have multiple things going on at one time. You seek excitement, variety, adventure, and you couldn't really care less about comfort or safety. You bounce from unpleasant feelings you bounce back from unpleasant feelings very quickly, but you also seek constant new stimulation. So kind of nothing's good enough. Some of your thoughts are this isn't fulfilling. The next thing has got to be exciting. I've been at this job for 6 months. I could do it in my sleep. What's the next best thing? You just get restless. You just get agitated. You just get unsettled. You feel restless and you want more options. And some of the lies that you tell yourself is that life is too short. I got to live it to the fullest and take on every possible adventure, project, anything that I can, because you have the FOMO, the fear of missing out. But the impact to yourself and others is that underneath the surface of fun and excitement of the restless is an anxiety-based escape from being present and being willing to be present in the moment and experience things in real time. Because sometimes those real-time experiences are not the best and can be unpleasant. The restless avoids a real and lasting focus on the issues and relationships that truly matter. Anybody have a restless mindset? That is definitely one of mine for sure. All right, then where are all my sticklers at? Where are all my perfectionists at? Any perfectionists in the room? Because that probably last page is probably about sit you over the edge. All right, my sticklers, my perfectionists. Organization is of utmost importance. So I am so not a perfectionist. So let me just ask you, for all my perfectionists, how badly does this page where the pictures don't line up drive you bonkers? That was just fun for me. So I apologize for you perfectionists. So, but it proves the point, because some people, I sent this out to like 4 or 5 people, a couple of which who I knew were perfectionists, were like, are you going to fix the slide? Are you going to fix the slide on this page? They're not lined up. And they are perfectionists. It's like, no, it's on purpose for that. Like, I can't even focus on what you're trying to say because because of the slide. But they're punctual, they're methodical, they're highly critical of their self and others. They have a strong need for self-control and self-restraint. They're highly sensitive to criticism. Anybody hard to take construction? They hate mistakes. Their thoughts might be, I need to be more organized and methodical than others so things will actually get done. Others have such lax standards. If you can't do it perfectly, then just don't do it at all and get out of my way and let me do it. Some of the feelings that you might be having is constant frustration and disappointment with yourself and others for not living up to high standards, sarcastic or self-righteous overtones, suppressed anger and frustration, especially when people don't process information like you. Randy says, yep. Some of the lies you tell yourself. This is a personal obligation. It is up to me to fix the mess. Perfectionism is good. Plus, it makes me feel better about myself. There's usually a clear right way and clear wrong way to do things. But some of the impact to yourself and others is that it can be a source of ongoing anxiety and frustration. It can reduce your ability to be flexible in dealing with change. It can cause resentment, anxiety, self-doubt, and you might feel continually criticized and resign yourselves to the fact that no matter how hard you work, they could never please you and you can never please yourself because it's never good enough. All right, and then lastly, my favorite one, where are all my victims in the house? Where are you at? All right, so victims, everything happens to you. Anybody ever tell you you're a martyr? Everything happens to you. Everybody else has the upper hand. Everything always happens to you. Nothing's good enough. Why can't you get ahead? You gain attention by being a victim. You have an extreme focus on your feelings, particularly painful ones, and you have a martyr streak. Some of the characteristics: if you are criticized or misunderstood, you tend to withdraw, pout, or even sulk, even as an adult. You are fairly dramatic. When things get rough, you want to crumple and give up. You have repressed rage, resulting in depression, maybe even apathy, and probably constant fatigue. You're unconsciously attached to having difficulties. Drama is what you crave. You get attention by having emotional problems. So some of the thoughts you might have: no one understands me. Poor me. Terrible things always happen to me. I'm probably just uniquely disadvantaged all of the time. I am what I feel. I wish someone would rescue me from this dreary mess. Some of the feelings you might have is that you tend to brood over negative feelings for a very long time. You feel alone and lonely a lot, even when surrounded by friends and family. You dwell on envy and negative comparisons. Some of the lies you tell yourself: by acting this way, I at least am getting some of the love and attention I feel I deserve. Sadness is a noble and sophisticated thing that shows exceptional depth, insight, and sensitivity. But some of the impacts this has on yourself and others is that the vitality wasted through focus on internal processing and brooding backfires, because you end up pushing people away when all you're really craving is the human connection. And others feel very frustrated, helpless, or guilty that they can't put more than just a temporary band-aid on your problem. All right, so now we've gone through all of these little guys. We've gone through all of the inner accomplices, as he said. So we've got the avoider, the controller, the hyperachiever, the hyper-rational, the hyper-vigilant, the people pleaser, the restless, the sticklers or the perfectionists, and the victim. So I want you to put in the chat at least one. You may have more, but at least one of the saboteurs that you know that you have. And this is not a bad thing. We all have them. None is worse than another. We all have them. But if you don't know who your saboteur is, you don't know how to listen for that voice to separate from that being a saboteur, who I know I need to be and who I know I need to focus on. The avoider, hyper rational. Yep. Yeah, Macy, I get it. I did not like myself for 10 years. Absolutely. Avoider. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So pay attention, put in your notes, put in your workbook, one, if not two. There's usually two pretty focal ones. There might be one that's more, but you've got the judge, he's the master, and then here's the accomplice of the saboteurs. So make a note of at least one or two. You're going to need this in day 2 and day 3 of who those guys are to really focus in and be able to listen to and hear who those saboteurs are. So before we kind of move on, does anybody have any questions about any of the saboteurs or need more clarification of who the saboteurs are to know which ones are yours? Okay. So why do we need to know who these saboteurs are? Because we have these 25,000 to 50,000 thoughts going on in our mind on any given day. 50,000 thoughts. And we don't make ourselves think things. Thoughts just come into our minds. It's no wonder we are exhausted, right? And remember what we said earlier, 70% of those thoughts are negative in nature. And so we have to train our brains to proactively and intentionally change how we think. And that is not just done overnight. And unless you recognize who those saboteurs are, telling you you're not good enough, no one's going to love you, you're the only one that can do this perfectly, this or that, it keeps us from having human connections. It keeps us from being intimate with people. It keeps us from being connected to the world around us. It keeps us from being able to walk into our purpose. Because what happens when we have these thoughts? They're not just there and then they go away. We have these emotions that we attach to each and every single one of these 25,000 to 50,000 thoughts. All of these emotions going on any given day, and especially women who tend to, not always, tend to be more emotionally conscious than men. We can go from being happy to crying to being angry to being pissed off to crying and being happy again, all in the span of one conversation, let alone one day, right? So we have to be able to recognize where those thoughts are coming from. Oh, that's my judge telling me that. That's the controller saboteur telling me that I need to step up and take control of this. That's the hyper rational in me telling me that the emotional side of this doesn't make any sense. That's the victim part of me telling me I need to step in and say, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. You have to recognize what saboteur has provided what thoughts to you, because otherwise, if you don't, you're going to react instead of respond to those thoughts, and an emotion gets attached to those thoughts, right? So then what happens? We take actions based on those emotions. And most of us, if we're honest, we react. We do not respond. How many of you, if you're in a heated conversation with someone, all you're doing is listening for enough of a pause for them to take a breath so you can step in and dispute what it is they're saying to them, rather than saying, so what I heard you say was, and respond rather than react. Because if we're honest, put it in the chat, if we're honest, we are reactors more than we are responders. And if we are responders, more likely than not, according to psychology today, we have done over 10,000 hours of practice for our reaction to now be a response mode than to be a react mode. It takes that long to undo because our emotions want to make us how we feel about the thoughts inside our head. They're wrong. What they're saying is wrong. And it makes me angry. It makes me upset. So I need to refute what they're saying rather than, I don't believe the same thing, but I'd like to know more. Why is it that you believe this? Why is it that you think this? Think about, yeah, Macy, we can have anger and we can lose our mind. And before we know it, we've responded or we've reacted. And the next thing we know, I didn't even know what was happening. And here's the anger mechanism, or here's this, or we've lashed out at this, or a coworker or a loved one, and we didn't even realize it until after it's already happened. And we can take these emotions and we can be led by them, or we can understand in an intentional mindset to stop and allow these saboteurs to be weakened. First of all, because we acknowledge who they are, we know what they are. We now know where these saboteurs are coming from. Our past experiences, sure, but I don't have to allow that saboteur to make me have this emotion. Or if this emotion comes into play, I don't have to allow myself to be mad all day because that's how I want to feel, because we are grown-ups and we are in control of ourselves and we are in control of our actions. And because I am in control, I can choose to make a response rather than a reaction. I can choose to make a choice not based off my emotions, because as we all know, every last one of us has, regardless of the situation, has a regretful moment where it was less than stellar, where we were embarrassed by our response or reaction. We wish we could have handled that in a different way. But that choice is there. It's part of our past. It's part of our past experiences, right? It's part of what got us to this point. But we can learn from those past experiences. We can learn when those thoughts come into play. I can bring those thoughts, for me, I choose to bring those thoughts captive back into what my faith is asking me to believe and think and know, because of who I serve and who I believe in, which is Jesus Christ, to say, you know what, God, I don't want to be led by my emotions. I don't want to be led by these random thoughts. I want to be led by a purpose of intentionality, of grace and love and of joy that is beyond understanding, that makes people say, where does your joy come from? How are you able to do the things that you're able to do? And it opens up a door for me to share with them my faith and why I believe the way I live. Now, in this day and age, how crazy is that? Because it's you open up your social media and politics or religion, if somebody doesn't agree with you more at least once, how many of you have been where you're getting ready to go and make that response and then you have to hit the delete, backspace, because you so want to respond, but you know it's not going to be good if you do. That's the intentionality of this. And for me, my family, we grew up where we talked about politics. We talked about religion, for an example, in today's day and age, just because it's such a volatile, easy example, where we were taught people are going to believe differently than you. We are going to live our life based off this and based off that. But the world around you probably doesn't believe that, or probably doesn't think the same. But if you want that same respect when you're telling people how you think about something or how you believe about a topic, you have to give that in order to expect that. And a lot of times, how often do we find, because people are saying things that go against what we think or against what we believe or against what we believe to be true, our initial reaction is just to respond and tell them why they're wrong, rather than to engage people and say, tell me why you believe the way that you believe. Tell me about your life experience. Tell me about why you think the way that you do. Because we may come to the same solution, but how we got there may be completely different. My set of beliefs may be completely different than your set of beliefs. But I want to be a student of the world. I want to be a citizen of the world. I want to know what's going on with the world around me. Why do people in India believe the way that they do? Why do people in Silicon Valley invest the way that they do? Why? I'm curious about those things, rather than let me prove you wrong, because I'm confident enough in what I know and believe to be true and the things that I hold dear to me, that I don't have to prove you wrong in order to make my belief system any less true. I can operate and flow according to my own set of thoughts, my own set of emotions, my own set of actions, because I have a goal in mind of how I'm trying to operate and live my life, that when all these other influences from the world, including my saboteurs, come onto the stage, I don't have to sit there and say, oh my goodness, I have to go prove them wrong. It doesn't make my belief system any less true. In fact, by engaging them and asking them questions, because I am so confident and rooted what I know and believe to be true, or how I have chosen to live my life, I can ask engaging questions and connect with another human by saying, tell me more. Tell me more about that, and ask more engaging and open-ended questions without having to have this strife going on. And it can be the same in a workplace. You might have a person that you're working on a project with, and you are on opposite ends of the spectrum of how to approach the project. Tell me why you think we need to go about it this way, rather than saying, I don't agree. You don't know why you don't agree, other than the fact that they've said something and you don't agree with the statement, but you may not know why they don't agree with you. And how can you come to some semblance of bridging a gap and building a bridge with someone if you don't know why they're on the other side of the bridge? So that's where all of this can come from and stem from. It's not just about you, although it is. You have to know where these thoughts come from, who these saboteurs are. You have to understand when these emotions are coming in. Oh my gosh, I want to respond. I got to react. You're still in the driver's seat. You are still in that driver's seat. As long as you are choosing and making that action, you are in the driver's seat of your life. I am going to respond this way, and it can keep you from having the regrets. It can keep you from second guessing your choices. It can keep you from wondering, is this a good person to have in my life? Because you are not just rehashing the choice, you are all the way back to the emotion, and you're all the way back to the thought. Those thoughts don't dictate who I am. Just because I'm saying I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a control freak, or I am a stickler, or I'm a hyperachiever, doesn't mean that's the identity that makes me true. I'm a woman, I am a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, I'm a niece. Those are all facts. But because an emotion made me so angry and I lashed out at somebody, that doesn't make me a horrible human being. But if I don't continue to recognize, or start to recognize, how those choices came from the emotion and how those emotions came from the choices, at some point you have to start to recognize, man, I may have sabotaged my own life. I may have sabotaged my own choices. And if you don't know this ahead of time, that's not your fault. But once you start to recognize and know where these come from, and where these thoughts come from, and the emotions that get attached to them, and the choices we allow ourselves to make because of them, am I going to be intentional and be proactive in my life? Or am I going to sit back and be just a survivor and just allow my life to move forward, and just whatever happens, whatever thoughts go through my mind, whatever emotions I have, whatever choices I make, so be it, c'est la vie? Or I have goals I want to accomplish. In 5 years, I want to be doing this. In 3 years, I want to be doing this. In a year, I want to look back and my life is different because I'm doing this. It starts with your choices. We may not love the choices we have, but how we view those choices allows us to move forward in a positive or a negative way. Simple example. I live in Florida. We just had a wonderful event 9 months ago called Hurricane Ian, all but 5-category hurricane that has resulted in a 40% increase in my home ownership insurance rates. 40%, that's huge, it's massive, okay? That's budget altering for our family, okay? I can sit here and say, how in the world am I gonna make it? Oh my gosh, this is horrible. I can't believe they're doing this to them. I can go through all the saboteurs and say all the negative things that can come from it, or I can be intentional and say, what is a positive outcome that can come from this? What is something good that can come from this? How can I look at this problem seemingly in a positive way? My house didn't get destroyed. My family isn't sitting there looking for loved ones. I still have a home to come to. I have friends who still are misplaced in other parts of the country, who may not ever get to come back to Florida to live. Okay, yes, it's budget altering that I have to figure out this other 40% of this insurance. but I didn't lose my home. I'm still living in my home. I didn't lose a family member. There are positive ways to look at thoughts that come into our minds if we will take back control and be proactive and be intentional and allow ourselves to make us see positive in this. Because a lot of times, what do we want to do? We want to sit in that negative space. We want to sit there and sulk. We want to sit in there and have people feel badly for us. But you know what? That is such wasted time. I could have chosen to look at this in a positive way. Okay, how do I get back on the horse and ride? Because I've got goals and I've got a trajectory that I am aiming for, and nothing is going to get in the way. There may be hiccups. There may be or the speed bumps along the way, but I'm still moving down that road. You know, you're moving back in the road. Think back to what we did at the beginning where we had the worry suitcase with all of the stuff in there for the future and the past suitcase with all the fear and regret. And when you let it go, I have no idea what the future is going to hold. I have no idea. And I know what the past held. But you know what? All of those negative, Macy, to your point, all of those negative experiences that I had and all that guilt and shame, you know what I've allowed it to do in my life? It's allowed me to be more compassionate. It has allowed me to become more empathetic to others around me because I have experienced things that I never thought I would go through. And so instead of saying, oh, poor me, man, how do I share that experience with somebody else so hopefully they don't have to go through the same thing I went through? How do I open up my hand to someone and say, here's what I experienced, here's my life. I hope it can help you in some way. How do you help the world around you? But if all you're doing is letting whatever thought comes into your mind have whatever emotion it needs to have applied to it, and you're not interfering with that autopilot and saying, no, this action is going to be my choice proactively, intentionally, you're going to be on autopilot for a very, very long time. And the self-sabotaging behaviors are going to continue. So tomorrow, when we go through this, we're going to get into how in the world did I get here? You might end up looking like Dorothy with the deer in headlights look like, what in the world am I looking at? And how did I get here? How did this become my life? How did this become my life? But we're going to talk about the root causes because we know what those saboteurs are. Now that we have identified who they are, what are the things that they say, now we're going to look at where did they come from. So how can I break that root free so that I can then take back control into the driver's seat? So that's what we're going to do on day 2. I want you guys to come back. We're going to talk about the root cause of this. I have a guest speaker, Deb Dredden. She's awesome. Deb Dredden Transformational Coaching. She's got a great video for us. She's also going to kind of go through a very, very interactive piece. So come back, come ready. Make sure you guys have your workbook ready to go with this. And it's going to have this aha moment for you tomorrow. And then on day 3, we're going to say, okay, what's the action plan? What do I need to do? How do I do this? How do I recognize this day in, day out, moment in, moment out, so that I can change the trajectory of my life? And you're going to sit back and you're going to be like, oh, this is so easy. But the action steps after the fact are going to be completely up to you. But the choice is going to be right there for you for the taking. So I've done tons and tons of talking. So what questions do you guys have? If you want to ask a question in the chat, you can. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, you can. Anybody have any questions or comments? Does this make sense to everybody? Is this like, okay, I'm tracking with what you're talking about? Crazy lady, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you guys think? Is this making sense? Yes, now I can see your comments. Macy, I'm going back up to some of the other stuff you said. Yeah, Macy, a lot of times it's not even what you've experienced in your own life, but what you've seen in others, and that being a trigger of saying, I don't want to be like this or to be like that. Randy, I put obstacles in my way, and when I finally get to it, it's so easy. I beat myself up for not doing it earlier. How do I get out of this procrastinator phase? Yes, Randy, and we are going to go through exactly that, the procrastinator phase. A lot of times we get so hung up on what could work, the success of it, or we're afraid it's going to fail, and so we just do nothing and we're paralyzed by the inaction. But Ranty, tomorrow is going to be your day. You're going to love it, Ranty. Yeah, Macy, and the fact that you're already knowing and recognizing that you have that potential is crucial, because none of us have to stay where we are. And that's the great thing that I love about constantly willing to be a person who's willing to learn, is that it doesn't matter how old you are. I'm 47 years old. And I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly understanding more things about myself. And you are never too old or too young to start, and you can make the change. And it starts by small choices. Every single day, you are riddled with choices all day, every day. From the moment you get up with your alarm goes off, you make a choice. The very first choice you make every single day: do I get up to my alarm, or do I hit the big fat snooze button? Every day, all the way to when you go to bed. When do I put the phone down? When do I close my eyes and finally fall asleep? We have the choices all day, every day. And the more empowered we are by the knowledge that we have and by the self-awareness that we have, which we're going to talk a lot about tomorrow, it allows us to take back control in a positive way, to be able to make the choices we want, to have the life that we love, and to be able to lead a life where we can change the world around us, which is the whole point of why we were put on this earth. So yes, Kristen, great question. So your saboteurs can absolutely change change over time. So my saboteurs used to be, well, let me go back to, my saboteurs used to be victim for sure. I was never a perfectionist, I can always say. I was hyper rational. I was a hyper achiever, and now I am a control freak, and I am restless. And so, yeah, it can absolutely change over time. And there can be more than one. Yeah, Christy, what does it mean that I fit into 4? Controller, hyperachiever, restless, and perfectionist. Yeah, there can be one depending upon the situation, where you have more of one thing happening than another. At work, you might have these kind of saboteurs that take place. At home, you might have these kind of saboteurs at work. In your volunteer opportunities, you might be one of these saboteurs. They can all take shape. And it's not a matter of only having one or another. It's a matter of understanding when the thoughts come into my mind, where are they rooted from? Where are they coming from? Okay, the hypervigilant in me is saying this. The controller saboteur in me is saying this. When I want to judge others, when I'm listening to them sing, because I want to cringe when I'm watching America's Got Talent, the judge in me is wanting to say this or that. But then you're also learning how to make choices, knowing that's not who I am. That's a thought that I had, and recognizing the difference. Because a lot of times we say, oh, I made a bad decision there. And we think, I can't trust myself to make a good decision. I'm not good enough to do that. And that's not the case. So you can be a lot of those different things. And over time, those can certainly change. And depending upon the situation, it's just recognizing what those saboteurs are and saying, that's not me. My judge saboteur is saying, I'm not good enough. My controller saboteur is saying, I have to step in and override my coworker when they're probably doing a good job, but I just have a control situation where I feel like I have to be in control. Ranty, I felt like I could relate to a little of every category, but mostly avoider. I feel like once I get through, I'll be, yeah, Ranty, it's very easy to, especially if you've had conflict or, easy word, quote unquote, drama a lot in your life. A lot of times you don't want to have to go through that and say, okay, I'm going to deal with this conflict. It's sometimes easier to just avoid it. But that resentment and that bitterness and that rage and that brokenness, if not dealt with, eventually will rear its ugly head at some point. And so you can say, I tend to want to avoid situations because when I have had to have those conflicts in the past, they haven't had a successful or a positive outcome. How do I then, how does my avoider saboteur make me have an emotion saying, oh, here's a conflict where you're all anxious and you've got this anxiety over having to have a critical conversation. If we don't ever have to have agitation, or if we don't ever have to have situations where we are forced to make a decision where we progress or where we grow, how do we know that we're getting any better? And it's like that in a lot of our relationships, right? If you don't have crucial conversations, doesn't mean they all have to be arguments, but if we don't learn how to have crucial conversations that are difficult and hard to have, but can do it in a respectful way, mutually beneficial to one another, those can become great conversations. One of the best things I've enjoyed, I've known my husband since third grade. We've only been married for 6 years, but I have enjoyed having very deep, crucial conversations where we vehemently disagree on a lot of topics, but we have a mutual respect for one another. Again, tell me why you think that. How did you come about that? Because we both grew up in the same type of home. Both of our parents are still married for 40 something and 60 something years. We both went to the same church. We both went to the same youth group. We both went to the same school, and we have very different views on a lot of things. How in the world did you come up to this when we were raised like this, or vice versa? But it's a beautiful conversation because how we all process information is different based on different experiences that we have. And even with similar situation, the experiences can be completely different. And a lot of times what you think somebody's experience was just because they were in the room does not mean it was their exact same experience. You can have the same, you can be in the room with someone and they be on the stage and you be in the audience, and your experiences are clearly completely different. Same thing, even if both of you were audience members. So we can't assume people's experiences are ours just because they were in the room. Okay. All right. I know I'm kind of in my own spot getting bullied at college, so I still, despite sometimes I think I'm ready for a relationship because right now I'm so focused on me, and sometimes I feel like it's so hard to. So Macy, a couple of things that, and you're being very vulnerable, and I really, really appreciate that. I think one of the things as we're learning who our saboteurs are, when you're dealing with this, especially in real time, when you've got influences that may be more combative than others, where what I mean by that is a lot of times you don't know where home base is. You don't know where the safe place to land is, where you can just sit and be in that space to think through and identify, okay, this is what my mom is saying about me. This is what a boyfriend or a spouse is saying about me, or this is what a coworker or a boss is saying about me. And all those things are spinning and landing, and you don't know where is a safe space to sit and say what's actually true. That can be really, really difficult. And so one of the things that I would encourage you to do, and we're going to do this a lot tomorrow and Wednesday, which is very hard for me. So the fact that I'm asking you guys to do this is making me vulnerable too. But I was never a good journaler, or I never kept a diary as a kid because I was always afraid my mom would find it. So I just kept the spots all in my head. And so, but journal a lot of these thoughts, even if they don't make sense. Journal these thoughts, even if they're just racing thoughts. Mom's a bully, want a relationship but don't know how, whatever those may be. Because what you can do is with those thoughts, you can identify, first of all, where are these coming from? Which saboteur is bringing these thoughts into my mind? Where are they coming from? Then you can determine what emotion do I want to attach to these thoughts. I don't want to be bound by what my mom is thinking of me. And I'm not sure how old you are, if you're still living with your mom or what have you. But I can recall being in an abusive marriage and having to untrain and retrain my brain from everything that I knew I grew up believing, which was very positive, was told I was great, was told I could do anything, was told I could accomplish anything, to then living in a marriage where I was so afraid and so scared and so unsure that when I got back on my own and was responsible for 2 small children, I had no idea what I was doing because I hadn't made a decision in 10 years. I had not made a literal decision in 10 years. I did not know where I was the main one working. My husband at that time did not work, but he was the one that had access to the bank account. He would tell me, when you need money, I'll give it to you. So having to train my brain to trust the thoughts I was having, to trust the emotions I was having, rather than fall back into, to your point, the toxic environments of which I was in for so long. I had to write down different things to really get back to what is the truth. Who am I really? Not who I have allowed myself to believe based off what somebody else told me. Who am I? And so it will become easier for you as we get into these other days. And so please come back, and please continue to be open and vulnerable. We can talk offline, Macy, if you want to. I'm happy to do that. And anybody else, if you want to talk offline, we can do that too. But this is really what we're talking about. It's just, wow, okay, here's all these different sabotaging thoughts that I have, and you think that that's who you are, rather than understanding that's just a thought I have. And I get to choose and allow myself to take on whatever emotion, right? Because, like, for me, okay, I might get angry about something or upset about something. That's not the bad part. The emotion isn't necessarily the bad part, but the action I choose to have based off the emotion I am feeling is what I am accountable for me to answer to, for my family, for my faith, for loved ones that I have, because I don't want to live in a negative space. I've lived so long in a horrible, awful space of condemning myself. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Why is he cheating? What am I not doing? Am I not pretty enough? I'm not good enough. Blah, blah, blah. And here's 2 kids, and here, it's exhausting. Rather than, here is who I am designed and created to be. Here are all the things I am designed and created to be. And here is my why. And not only going and chasing my dreams, I'm going to go catch my dreams, because there are people counting on me to do and become all the things this was created and designed to be. And all the experiences I have, I can look at them in a negative way and say, oh my gosh, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Or I can look at them and say, they have enabled me to have a broader perspective and a broader ability to be compassionate and empathetic to people who are in the same stage I have been in, and I can offer up help for them. Doesn't mean you need help, but why put yourself through the same journey as somebody else who's already been there, if they can give you tips, tools, and tricks to help you and prevent you from being there also? You can flourish and thrive without having to go through all the pain and having to go through all the suffering. And if you recognize where these sabotaging thoughts come from, you can then be able to start to take back control and say, this is the life that I wanted. This is the life that I always dreamed of. Because as little kids, we dream, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to accomplish when you grow up? And then we get here and we stop dreaming. Who told you to stop dreaming? Keep dreaming, keep soaring, keep achieving, keep going for it. You can do anything that you put your mind to. That choice, my friends, is 100% up to you. And that's what this is all about. So I'll stay on for a little bit. We're done with today. We've got just about 8 minutes left, but I'll stay on for anybody else that wants to keep talking, but we're done with the content for today. So we're going to come back tomorrow, day 2, the root causes. We're going to recap today. We'll go through a little bit of an exercise, and then my guest speaker, Deb Dredden, is going to be on here. You do not want to miss tomorrow. It is going to be phenomenal. Make sure you bring your workbook. If you've got any questions, let me know. You can text me, or you can email me. You can put it in the chat here if you need to. If you want to talk offline between now and tomorrow, I'll make myself available to you. But thank you so much for showing up, and come back tomorrow. Be ready to rock and roll. It's going to be awesome. So thank you guys so much. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, Macy. Hold on, let me go back to your questions, my dear. Okay. Let me go back to some of your other stuff you're missing. I think I'm ready for like right now. Okay. Let me go back, Macy. I'm going back into some of this stuff. I want to watch for years. Macy, do you have any siblings? Do you want to come on? You should be able to unmute if you want to come online. Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me. There you go. Now I can unmute you. Can you hear me? Or let me ask, can I hear you? Okay, you should be unmuted, Macy, if you just want to. Well, no, you're not. Hold on. Yeah, I just asked you to unmute. So if you want to unmute or if you want to keep texting, that's fine, whichever you're more comfortable with. Sure, of course you can keep texting. Is it easier? Is it okay if I keep talking to answer your questions? Okay. So how did the relationship with your mom get to be so volatile? Let me see. She's trying to get me to live back at home, but it won't happen because she put me down for a year. Whenever I self-harm my mom. How did you live only with your mom as a kid? Like, was your dad around?